Last week, I told you that inner critics are scary on two different levels. Inner critics are scary because of the content of what they're saying, all those self doubting, self critical, second guessing whispers in your brain. And inner critics are also scary because it can feel like there's something wrong with you for even having an inner critic in the first place. You can look at it and wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just like myself and believe in myself? Like, how hard could that be? So there are two layers of fear. The layer one fear is I'm doing it wrong, and that comes from the content of what your inner critic is saying. And then the layer two fear is something is wrong with me for constantly thinking that I'm doing it wrong. And this comes from your own thoughts about the fact that your inner critic even exists. And as I told you in part one of this series, which I linked above, these double layers of emotions are incredibly common. And I also told you that anytime I see these double layers of emotions in my clients, I like to work from the outside in and tackle layer two first. So today, I'm going to tell you why there is nothing wrong with you for constantly thinking that you're doing it wrong. Because I'm going to tell you where your inner critic comes from, how it formed, and the forces that formed it. Now, here is the top line answer, and then I'm going to get into all the details. Top line answer is inner criticism is not a sign that anything's wrong with you. Inner criticism is just a sign that you are using someone else's compass instead of your own. I'll say it one more time. Inner criticism is not a sign that anything is wrong with you. Inner criticism is just a sign that you're using someone else's compass instead of your own. Now, let me tell you what I mean by using someone else's compass with the assistance of a few Norman Rockwell paintings. Now, all three of these paintings I'm about to show you depict what I like to call a compass conflict. Here's the first painting. This one is called The Holdout. It's one of my favorite Norman Rockwell paintings. And if you're listening on the podcast, just come look at the video. I put a video podcast up, so come look at the screen and so you can see this painting. And I'll describe it for you as well. The Holdout shows the inside of a jury room. There's 11 men and one woman. And clearly what's happening is the woman has a different opinion than all the men. And 10 of the men have surrounded her. They're standing above her. They're standing right near her. They're all crowded around her. And they're all clearly kind of trying to persuade her to change her mind. And one guy's got his hand in her face, and it all seems very, very tense. So that's painting number one, The Holdout. Painting number two is called Girl at Mirror. So this shows a young girl by herself in a room. She's looking at a mirror. She's got a magazine open on her lap, and there's a picture of a woman, a model, or an actress that you can see on the magazine. And she's got the young girl has a brush, a comb, some lipstick on the floor, and it seems like she's kind of comparing herself to the model and maybe trying to put some makeup on to try to look like her. And then the third Norman Rockwell painting, it's also one of my favorites, is called The Shiner. This shows a little girl sitting on a bench outside the principal's office. She's got a big grin on her face and she's got a fat black eye. She clearly got into a fight. And you can just see through the door into the principal's office. And there's the principal and either her mom or a teacher. They're inside the office. They're kind of looking out at her with disapproval. So those are the three Norman Rockwell paintings. And all three of these paintings depict a moment when one person's compass has come into conflict with another person's compass. Let me talk about how, because there's actually shows three different kinds of compass conflicts. So in The Holdout, the conflict is direct. The woman's compass wants to decide the verdict in one direction. The men's compasses all want to go in the other direction. And the men are like getting in her face, trying to persuade her to do what they think she should do. So in this compass conflict, one compass is directly, overtly telling the other, you're doing it wrong. The compass conflict in Girl at Mirror is a little more implicit. There's no direct confrontation. The girl's by herself. There's nobody else in the room that's getting in her face and telling her she's not pretty or she needs to look different. Instead, there's just this implied standard. There's this implication that because this picture of this woman is in a glossy magazine, it's glamorized and famous and broadcast to everybody, there's this implication that this is what's right. This is what good looks like. And there's this quiet, implicit conflict between that standard and what this girl actually looks like. There's a compass conflict between the magazine editor's compass and the young girl's compass. And finally, in The Shiner, This is a compass conflict that comes with consequences because one of the compass holders has direct power over the other one. This is not a compass conflict between peers like in the holdout, and it's not this implicit conflict between a societal standard and an individual reality like in Girl at Mirror. This is a conflict between a child and adults at school, which is a setting where adults naturally have power over children. And this feisty little girl has followed her own compass and gotten into some kind of schoolyard brawl, and now she's experiencing consequences for doing so. Because not only do the adults' compasses say something different than hers does, it also turns out those adults can follow you to the principal's office and call your mom when you go against their compass. Now, not only do these three paintings show three different types of compass conflicts, they also show three different ways that a compass conflict can be resolved. So way number one of resolving a compass conflict is I'm right, they're wrong. And in The Shiner, I think this girl is resolving her conflict in the direction of I'm right, they're wrong. And it's true, she's been dragged to the principal's office, but look at the grin on her face. I don't think she's that cowed by this display of authority. I think she still thinks that she was right to do what she did. The second way that you can resolve a compass conflict is they're right, I'm wrong. And in Girl at Mirror, that's what I think is happening. I think this young girl is resolving her compass conflict in the direction of they are right and I am wrong. She's not thinking, oh, sure, everyone else says the woman in the magazine is beautiful, but I don't think she is. She's thinking, the woman in the magazine is pretty, and I need to look like her in order to be pretty myself. And she's using the comb and the makeup by her feet to make herself look that way. And the third way you can resolve a compass conflict is by kind of not resolving it and just hanging out in the I'm not sure. And in the holdout, that's kind of what's happening. It's not clear yet how this young woman is going to resolve her compass conflict. Will she be persuaded? Will she hold out? Only time's going to tell. But in the meanwhile, tensions feel pretty high and that conflict just keeps dragging on. Now, here's the thing about compass conflicts like these. You have experienced hundreds, if not thousands of these kinds of conflicts throughout your life. Parents, teachers, bosses telling you what to do when you feel like doing something else, peer pressure, both subtle and overt from your friends and your colleagues, the endless bombardment of messages from books, movies, TV shows, advertisements, and the media. You can barely step out of your house without running into a conflict between your compass and somebody else's. And compass conflicts are not inherently bad or insidious or traumatic. They're a normal part of being a human being in a society. You can't avoid them. They are inevitable. But here's why completely normal compass conflicts can turn into an insidious inner critic. As you were growing up, you ran into tons and tons of compass conflicts all day long. And kids tend to resolve compass conflicts in the direction of they are right and I am wrong. Especially so for little insecure overachiever kids like myself and maybe like you as well. Now, resolving compass conflicts in the they're right and I'm wrong direction is 100% normal for kids. Adults are big and authoritative and they seem to know what they're doing. Adults can deploy consequences when you follow your own kid compass too much and they really make it clear that they're right and you're wrong. It's probably even evolutionarily advantageous for kids to resolve these kinds of conflicts by thinking they're right and I'm wrong. Because the kids who kept resolving these conflicts as I'm right and they're wrong probably wandered away from the group and didn't survive. And the next thing I want to tell you is even though defaulting to they're right and I'm wrong as a kid is 100% normal, developmentally appropriate, and probably even net advantageous, when you get a ton of reps doing that, and when you get into the habit of resolving compass conflicts in the they're right, I'm wrong direction all the time, you also get into the habit of using somebody else's compass instead of your own all the time. When you use someone else's compass instead of your own, that creates an inner critic. Because when you use someone else's compass, your compass doesn't go away. It's still sitting there, beaming out its message to you as loud and steady as ever. The only difference is you now distrust your own compass. So you question it, you criticize it, You doubt it. You roll your eyes at it. You get frustrated at it. You tell it to shut up. You tell it to get its shit together. You tell it to just grow up and do what's right. And all of that distrust that is aimed at your own inner compass, that is your inner critic. So inner criticism is not a sign that anything is wrong with you. Inner criticism is just the byproduct of using someone else's compass instead of your own. I'll say it one more time. Inner criticism is not a sign that anything is wrong with you. Inner criticism is just the byproduct of using someone else's compass instead of your own. So, what are you supposed to do now when you realize that this is happening in your brain? I'm going to go into full detail on that tomorrow in part 3 of this series, but for today, let me give you the very first step. Every time your brain starts criticizing you about something, I want you to turn around and ask it, brain, whose compass are you using right now? Just see what your brain says. Because often that question alone is enough to kind of shake your brain up and jumpstart it into using your own compass instead of somebody else's. So try that out for today. And tomorrow, I'm going to tell you more about how to tap into trust and consistently use your own compass. Because I think tapping into and building trust in your own inner compass is the critical skill that you need to build the life that you actually want, to build a life that makes you come alive. You can't build it from someone else's blueprint. You can only build it from your own. So if you want some spot coaching to help you tap back into your own inner compass, you can grab a free coaching session with me anytime you like. The link to book a free anonymous public coaching call is above. And if you want to get to work actually building the life you want in 2025, come talk to me and let's put together a plan for doing just that. The link to book a free consult call is above.